Good day, everyone. This is Tom T. Moore, and I'm the author of 8 books. In this episode 13, we're going to start, at least, on past, present, and future lives. And so let me kind of explain just a little bit. When we all, our souls volunteered to take part in the what's called the Earth experiment that the creator of our universe decided to see how if anyone could work with the four negative energies, which no other of the trillions of creators of universes had been able to work with. So he asked for volunteers, and our souls volunteered anywhere from an average of 6 to 12 fragments of themselves um, to take part in the Earth experiment and have somewhere between 600 and 800 lives. Now, you would think that our lives would be sort of vertical. In other words, if we had a life in, let's just say, 1940, um, then if we died in 1945 in a war, then our next life would be perhaps in 1946 or 1950. But it doesn't work that way. We go back and forth uh, between uh, lives so that we may have a life in 1940, and then the next life after that, we might have a life in ancient Atlantis or Lemuria. So we go back and forth according to what our souls need to accomplish and what other souls that we work with other what are called soul clusters, those other souls that have 6 to 12 fragments of themselves that we work with at time, life after life after life. So that's the the start of it, and I'll add more information as we go along. Um, so I'm going to use myself as an example of the many lives that you can have on Earth and how they jump from one time period to the next. And I've just barely scratched the surface because I've been told I've already had 1,005 lives, where most people only have 600 to 800, and that's because my soul interests that I've been given by my soul are religions of the world, and also in other lives to be advisors to leaders. So I started off with, and I might add before I get into this, that anyone can do what I'm doing. Everyone has the pineal gland in the back of your heads, and this acts as an antenna for all telepathic thoughts, images, feelings, you name it. They have many, many different names, but they're all telepathic. Okay. So um, the uh, the when I was before I came to Earth, before my soul volunteered to put me in the Earth experiment, um, I my soul was having uh, over 100,000 lives on a water planet called Nomo, and that um, uh, uh, I was a religious leader, and sort of like the Dalai Lama, I would reincarnate again and again as this religious leader. So, as I've mentioned before in one of the other earlier episodes, that um, we were having this huge Star Wars with a reptilian race called the Dracos, or Dracos, whichever you pronounce, and it wasn't going well. The Star Wars lasted over 27,000 uh, uh, universal years and 270,000 Earth years. So this is why you see many science fiction writers talk about long, long wars because this one was really long, very destructive. I have more about that war in an earlier episode, so just look it up. Now, the uh, so we weren't doing too well. So creator, and I call him creator because this is the creator of our universe with trillions of galaxies and every single one of them different from all the others. And uh, so to me, creator best expresses what he is. And also, it's a word that's accepted by all the major religions of the world, even though they have all sorts of different names for him. So creator gave me a little uh, whisper saying, well, why don't you suggest that the Dracos, the reptilians, provide 10% of the souls that will be taking part in the Earth experiment? So I suggested that, and it was immediately rejected. Oh, they hated, they despised the Dracos because of all the billions of people that had already been killed over this long period of time. And so it was rejected. So 450 universal years later, they said, well, okay, we'll just see if they'll accept it because things weren't going well for what became the Federation of Planets, which is composed of 20,000 planets in our quadrant of the galaxy of the Milky Way. And so they suggested it to the Dracos, and they accepted. So that ended the war. So with that, uh, the Federation said, "Oh, you've got to be an advisor to us because you think outside the box." And I said, "Well, no, this is just a simple suggestion." They said, "No, we want you to be an advisor." So from that standpoint, from that point forward, then I became an advisor to the Federation of Planets. And this carried on because when when I my soul volunteered for the Earth experiment, all the souls who had soul contracts to be leaders of small countries, big countries, kings, queens, etc., they wanted me to be their advisor. So instead of the normal 600 to 800 lives on Earth, they I wound up being signed up for 1,300 lives. I'm at 1,005, so I've got about 300 more lives to go. So what I'm going to take up today will show you how different all of these lives can be because my sole interest was religions and was governments to be an advisor to these leaders. So with that, now uh, the uh, so each of these 600 lives, as I mentioned, can be in the past, present, or future. Um, but your first life on Earth can be as an animal. And this is because this negative energy, these four negative energies, are so powerful that our universe, which was created in the 10 positive energies, like all the other trillions of universes, um, th these are very strong energies, very restrictive energies, I'll call them. And so, in order to get your feet wet, so to speak, they would allow you to have one life as an animal just to feel these four negative energies and get used to them. After that, it's all human lives. Now, it might be an early human life, like even a Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon or even farther back, uh, or whatever, but these are human lives. And so for my first life on Earth, I chose the life of a panther in the jungle. I understand one of the uh, very common choices for souls on Earth has been horses. So who knows if you've got own a horse or uh, have uh, have ridden horses, one of those horses might actually be a soul that was going to be a human soul in their next life. You never can tell. So I I chose a panther in the jungle because my first life, and I was very one of the very first um, souls to have a life on Earth, um, uh, was as a human in a jungle. I was told it didn't last very long, but that was my first life. Now, after that, let me give you some other, uh, for instances. Um, as an example, I was now when the actual Homo sapien human was introduced 60,000 years ago after the ETs had tested out all these different bodies for a body that could withstand these four negative energies. And they finally settled on the Homo sapien. Um, I so they started introducing these in groups uh, in each continent. So the ETs could form a human body in 2.5 minutes, and they had the ability to call for a soul to ensoul each of those bodies. Even when we get to the point in supposedly 4,000 years of of being able to create androids, we will have to call on the ETs to ensoul the body because we, for whatever reason, will not be able to do that. Um, so, with that in mind, uh, and all of these groups of people, they would pop out 30 or 40 or 20 or whatever in a village, and they would put them there with absolutely no clothing, uh, but instructions on where to find food and so on, probably even to how to light a fire, which people have wondered how people learned to do that for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so that that's how all these little villages were settled, and slowly they would grow and they would uh, meld with perhaps another village that was 50 miles away or something on that order. And that's how these continents were populated with all sorts of different beings, because different humans, because Creator wanted to see how long it would take for people to be able to accept everyone according to no matter what their race, their beliefs were, uh, uh, their religious beliefs, political, whatever. So that was one of the designs that Creator had them do, and that's why you see all these different looking people in the world. Although in the future, if you notice, people are having mixed marriages slowly but surely. And in 1,000 years, there will not be uh, any different looking races. They'll all be one race, the Earth human. That's coming about in about 1,000 years. And you can see that happening with all the interracial marriages that are slowly but surely taking place. So, in one of my first lives as a Homo sapien, it was probably somewhere around 55, 59,000, or even more years ago. I was, uh, it was in India, and I was one of Shiva's first class of yoga students. So this is something that has been lost to the Hindu people over thousands of years because this was so long ago, so many thousands of years, and of course probably they had to pass stories down from generation to generation, and you can understand how bad that works over a long period of time. So that was one of my first lives, and then um, let's see, next one that I know about. Keep in mind, I'm skipping around here because these are questions that you can ask in your own meditations. You can ask, what was my last past life on earth? What's my next life on earth going to be? And so on. And I might add that uh, there are right now 70% of the people having lives on Earth at the present time are all in what is called the young soul category, and then 20% are having it in the medium soul category, and only 10% are old souls on Earth. So, and then they're broken down into quadrants. So I found that there's a large number of people living on Earth in the young soul category that would be in the first, second, or third quadrant of young souls. So that a young soul might be uh, a villager in a very remote place, no electricity, and so on. You can be a villager like that in present day times or even 20,000 or 30,000 years ago. It's all the same type of life. And then you work your way on up uh, to the second quadrant and the third quadrant, and then the fourth quadrant of young souls. You're starting to really get it, and before you switch over to be a medium soul. Now, um, after that, I know that I did have a, a life in ancient Peru at Machu Picchu. I don't know too much about that, but uh, probably I was some type of religious leader. And of course, Machu Picchu, if you've done any studies on it, is extremely remote. When the Spaniards invaded Peru, they never found Machu Picchu. And and are uh, there are dwellings and things that the Peruvians made with smaller stones, but then there's these huge megalithic stones that are 50 tons or more. Uh, and how did they get there? That's that's something for people to discover in the future. Um, and uh, then I know I had several lives in Atlantean. Okay, Atlantis was uh, populated 60,000 years ago with Homo sapiens, just like all the other continents. And Atlantis was located in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it was about 10% larger than present day Australia. So I do have a whole episode on Atlantis and another one on Lemuria, which was also populated at the same time. Atlantis was in the Atlantic Ocean, which is why it's called the Atlantic Ocean, obviously, though some people question that. And Lemuria was located um, next to Japan and extended as far to the east as within 100 miles of the Hawaiian Islands. So the uh, so I had these lives in Atlantis. Now Atlantis was very uh, they loved to take over territories, so they conquered most of the Mediterranean. I do know that two of my lives uh, I was a soldier and I was sent to what was called then the Land of Oz, but we know it as Africa. And each time we went, we thinking we were going to conquer them because we had laser weapons that we had developed. We were completely overrun by the Maasai type native warriors, and I go into that more fully in the episode on Atlantis, so you might want to check that out. But I lost my life twice as a soldier by going to the land of Oz and being killed within a day or two of when we arrived. Now, the major life that I know about that I had in Atlantis, I was I was a religious leader, and I was inspired to create the Gentle Way. Now that's this book, and uh, so I I uh, created the Gentle Way, and I had about 1 million people that were following this. They were they were using these most benevolent outcomes in their lives, and they were having easier lives than the rest of the Atlanteans. Now, I was told about 12,700 years ago that the Atlanteans, within 200 years, were going to destroy themselves. Now, please understand, by this time, 30,000 years ago, Atlantis broke apart because of a line of volcanoes exploded. You again go to my episode on Atlantis to learn more about that. And so it only left some islands. And so these islands had started warring again, and uh, and within 200 years they were going to all destroy themselves. I was even taken in a ET spaceship, I was told, and taken to Egypt and said, "Well, this is where you need to take the people that will go with you to resettle." So with 25,000 of my followers, um, not all at one time, but over a few month period, I understand, I did um, uh, go with my 25,000 people, and we resettled in Egypt. So that was a major lie, and that was also an Egyptian princess uh, helped us resettle, and she is my wife today. Now, in her next life, um, she's going to be an ancient pharaoh somewhere around 12,500 years ago, and I'm going to be her advisor. So that's another life I had. But that one's a past life. I've already had that one. Obviously, I didn't need um, to go back in time. This time, I just needed to advise this early version of a pharaoh to help him rule his people. So, and we will see each other in some other lives I'll get to shortly. And then uh, in the next life that I know about was Lemuria. And I had probably about 180 lives or so in Atlantis. And I asked, well, have I had any lives in Lemuria? And I was told 65. And I said, why so few compared to Atlantis? And I was explained that even though Lemuria was settled at the same time as Atlantis, they had had a very peaceful existence and for thousands of years, and only in the last 1,000 years of their existence had these countries that existed on this continent, which was about 12% larger than present day Australia, had they started to war with each other. So when I asked, well, have what lives have I had there? Had I had lives there? And I was told by my guardian angel Theo, oh, Tom, And when he says that, I know something big's coming up. And so I said, okay. And he said, Tom, he said, you helped destroy the continent. And I said, oh. And so it seemed that I was a religious leader again. This was one of my bad guy lives. And we had been warring with these other two countries on the other side of the continent. And so I helped encourage them to drop two uh, hydrogen type bombs on those two countries that we all thought that they didn't have any way to retaliate, but they did. And so they came back at us with the same type of weapons. And with all of this, of these huge weapons, much, much larger than, if you can imagine, atomic bomb as an example, much, much larger. It broke apart the continent, and the oceans of the world rose 172 feet. So I know that I had to have either 85 or 87 lives to balance that one life, which I consider my worst life on earth. And that included going back to Atlantis and being there when when the uh, the islands of Poseidia and Aran and a few other islands sank into the sea, uh, and the seas at that time rose 45 feet, and that's actually when the story of Noah actually took place, and and he was told by God or Creator to build the ark, and he did sail off, but with domesticated animals, not wild ones, which the story was changed later over hundreds, thousands of years, because people said, well, if water covered the whole world, then he must have taken the wild animals too. No, it was only domestic. So after Lemuria, um, uh, it I had uh, lives at the start of all the major religions of the world because that was my sole contract, along with being an advisor to world leaders. So, as an example, I had um, lives, uh, several lives with Krishna. And Krishna, the Hindu people do not know this, but Krishna had 77 lives in a row as Krishna, as he wanted to be revered and followed as one of their gods. And so Krishna had 77 lives in a row. The Hindu people don't know this. This was lost in time because I think around the last time he had a life, I think I was with him. This was during the Mahabharata war when there was a despot trying to conquer the whole world. And we actually dropped some type of nuclear device on him and his thousands of minions and stop the war. So um, and I asked, well, did I have to balance that? And I was told no, that we had to stop this maniac from slaying hundreds, if not millions, of people in his desire to conquer the world. So that was the life I had with Krishna. I would come in again. I had several lives with him. I'd come in and check on him occasionally and be his friend and whatever. So uh, that was that one. Then um, uh, the I also had lives. Um, I was friend of Siddhartha, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who became the Buddha. So I had a life with him because he was starting a religion. And then I had a life um, as Salome or Salome, I don't know exactly how that was pronounced, which was one of the disciples, female disciples of Jesus, and I was the mother of James and John. And so I was with Jesus and helped uh, hide the fact that Herod threw him out of the country uh, and made it look like he was being crucified when he wasn't. That's very controversial. I realize that, but that's what I was told. Um, Along with Mary Magdalene and their four children. So, and I go deeply into this in the two episodes that I've had on Jesus, part ones and part twos, if you wish to go through that. Then I had um, the, uh, uh, let's see, uh, I'll find it. I was one of the 200 uh, bishops at the Council of Nicaea in 325 to 327 AD. This was a time when Constantine brought all of these 220 bishops, plus all of their servants and probably priests that were under them to Nicaea. There was probably over 1,000 there for 2 years, and they voted on what they wanted the beliefs for Christianity to be. And that influenced, of course, like the Council of Rome when they were working on the Bible, but it all started with the Council of Nicaea. I was told I was overruled several times because I was getting feedback of my life as Salome. And um, then I was uh, also uh, the uh, a friend of Muhammad, and of course that was 600 years or so ago. I was a good friend of Muhammad, and of course that was the religion was drastically changed by his scribe who thought Muhammad was too soft, and he added things after Muhammad died and changed the religion. That uh, person has had to have many balancing lives because he caused the deaths of millions of people. So, because Muhammad was a good guy, he really he taught love. Um, then I was uh, one of one of five men who offered their head to the Sikh guru, the 10th Sikh guru, and I became one of his advisors because he would take us into each of us into a tent, and it would sound like he was cutting off our heads, but he didn't. He just wanted to see who would be loyal to him, and I became one of his five advisors for the Sikh guru. Um, and I was a friend and I'm going to murder his name, pardon the use of expression, Baha Ullah, who founded the Baha'i faith. And with him, I wound up dying in prison when he was incarcerated. He was finally released, but I was with him in the formation of the Baha'i faith. So that's, I'm going to stop here. I've got too many to go. So again, if you will um, uh, if you want to learn more about all of this, keep in mind you can go to my website www.thegentlewaybook.com. You can sign up for my free newsletters and they come out weekly. I've got over 900 archived on my site so far, and you can go to the articles and news section and type in names if you want to see if I've asked questions because I am the only person in the world, I'm told, that takes questions to ask in my meditative sessions from anyone in the world. And so, as an example, recently I had questions that came in from Estonia, Nigeria, Australia, China, um, and and of course North America. So uh, I get questions from all over the world to ask in these meditative sessions, and I do my best. I consider myself in the 80 to 90% accuracy category. So that means 10 or 20% of the time I'm going to be wrong, but you can read my newsletters and see I don't hide anything. I just let you read, and then you can even come up with your own questions if you wish to send me a question. If I haven't asked it before, I'll put it on the list. So um, again, www.thegentlewaybook.com. And please, I've got 12 other episodes already, so I look forward to you um, uh, viewing those. And please uh, subscribe and please like. Okay. Thank you very much.